The treatment you shouldn't get. This is what I think, guys. This is my opinion only. My opinion only. If you've been online for a while and you can't break that trauma bond, the worst advice you could get is, look, this is just betrayal trauma. You just have to learn about narcissism or borderline personality. You need to learn about these dynamics. It wasn't your fault. Nothing you did was wrong. Tick, tick, tick. Time passes, and now you're healed. I don't like this at all. I don't like it because in my experience, it didn't work for me. That's why. So it's personal, right? But it could just be me. Maybe it works for you. But here's my suspicions about why it won't. Trauma bond is so fucking complex. The trauma bond is like this, I imagine it like this ball, like this dark ball of stuff. And there's love in it, and there's passion, and there's betrayal, and there's abuse, and there's name calling, and there's compliments, and there's like all kinds of stuff in it. And when we don't take any responsibility for stuff, when we choose, no, it's not my fault. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm a totally innocent victim. This is the problem. That trauma bond, in my opinion, you will never break the trauma bond if there's zero responsibility. One thing I notice a lot on forums is people's like responsibility, or even in comment sections, is, well, because I didn't know, that's why I'm responsible. Or maybe you started off in a really low place in your life. A lot of us did. My first abusive relationship, I was in a low place in my life, in a really lonely place. And so that love that I got and that attention and everything really meant a lot to me. So I know a lot of us, we do come out of these places of like, woundedness, maybe just in that moment in our life, or potentially earlier. And I think for me, I have both, but specifically that time in my life, it was a hard time. If I just look at it and say, okay, here's a checklist, here's what they do, here's what they are, that trauma bond, what I end up doing with this is this. You're trying to turn the other person, you're trying to paint them black. You're saying, okay, everything was bullshit. It was 100% manipulation, everything. So imagine this. Memories come up automatically outside of your control. Now, we can still think of memories. We can consciously bring up memories. But like I know, when you're done these relationships, or when you're in them, there's this obsessive component to it where you remember the really happy memory, or you remember the really awful memory. And then you have to frame it. So you take your memory and you're putting a frame on it. There's different frames we can put on it. And if your frame is, they're manipulative, it's all a lie, and I'm an innocent victim, what do you do with that memory? So you remember the really horrible memory where they're being really terrible to you, and you go, oh my God, I didn't deserve any of this. Good, you didn't. Even if you're taking responsibility for your actions, you didn't deserve abuse. So, okay, it's not my fault. It's all them. They were manipulating me and being awful and terrible, and everything they said was a lie. Okay, I'm not bad. I'm just going to pat myself on the back, give myself some good feelings, watch a nice movie, read a book, do something like kind to myself, which you should be doing definitely during recovery. But it's like a really superficial way of healing, right? I hope you guys can see that even with a really abusive thing where it's really obvious that they were being manipulative and that sort of thing, that might be an easy one to look at the bad thing and, okay, maybe it wasn't all my fault and this and that. And that can be really important, especially in the beginning. But what about the good memory? What do you do when you have the memory of that beautiful picnic you had and the sun setting, bottle of wine, and I don't know, whatever you would bring on this imaginary picnic, or the trip you did, or whatever it was? What do you do with that memory when they were really nice to you? They're just being perfect for you, complimenting you, I wrote a song for you, like whatever it is. What do you do with that memory? Well, now when that memory comes up, you're reframing it, because originally your memory was, we were so in love then. Why couldn't it be like that? So what's happening with you and your relationship normally is, you might frame the abuse as your fault. Like, what did I do to make that happen? Or too bad they were having a bad day, or how can I help them not to have a bad day so they don't project onto me? And then you have like your good memory. How can I make this happen? This is like real and loving. And maybe your framing of it is like, this is the real them, this is the real relationship, and this is like when things are fucked up. And so this is like your current framing. And what you first do is you're trying to push like everything into this box. And the issue with that is that you have to paint all of the good memories black. To me, this is re-traumatizing, even though you don't think it is. And I don't think, as partners who perhaps are healthier mentally, emotionally, than our abusive exes, is when we are trying to paint over this stuff, we can't hold anything in a black and white way except our own self-image. This is what I really think. You know, when we talk about borderlines and narcissists have black and white thinking of people outside of themselves, to me, it's like this. The narcissist has like white thinking about themselves. Like, I'm pure, fucking best human being ever. Of course, there's darkness under that, but it's almost like this perfect white sheet with like this little black dot in the middle. And then the borderline is like black and white thinking about themselves and about you. The narcissist is like white thinking about themselves and black and white about you. And you as a codependent, maybe we're like gray thinking about people. Oh, you have good and bad sides, you know, this and that. And I can always see your good side. So maybe it's like gray and white, and we don't really have black. You know, we have gray and white for others. And for ourselves, we have black and white thinking. I'm great, I'm wonderful, I'm awful, I'm terrible. I think we have this in common with the borderline. We have this, all three of us have a similar wound, right? A similar traumatic wound. So I think we really struggle with that ability to have black and white thinking about our partners. And so what we do is we like, okay, I need to paint her or him black. You stick it to them. And it's like a post-it note, you know, or whatever. It's like it loses its glue and it like falls. And you look at it again and you're seeing them in gray or white. No, 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 no. That was an abusive relationship. You do another post-it note and you have to like keep posting to it. But this is also like really obsessive, right? I have to, no, no, no. And part of you is rejecting it because, like, do you really think that none of the love was real? I mean, even if they told you after, yeah, everything was bullshit, it wasn't real, I never loved you, you're a piece of shit, you know, whatever. Obviously, when they're painting you black, they're going to say any of the bad things and all of the bad things that they can. And when they're praising you, painting you white, they're going to say all the best things about you, all the great things about you. They're going to go back and forth, and they're kind of both false, right? Ultimately, they're both kind of false, but they're also true in that moment, manipulative or not. And then we get into this thing where it's like, okay, well, maybe not all the time it was manipulative. So sometimes they were manipulating me, and other times they really meant it. And probably that's closer to the truth, right? And you go, well, did they really mean it? Because they can't really love. So that's not really love. And then you're doing this whole debate because you're trying to frame it and turn everything black. Like, this relationship was trash and it's not worth it. And I'm happy to be out of it, even though you're not really happy. You say that. I'm so happy. I'm so thankful I'm not in this relationship. Cognitively, yes. Emotionally, no. You're not there yet because you're watching this video. You can get there. My issue with this is the framing of it, right? The framing, you're going over this beautiful memory you had with them and you're painting all of it black. This is all trash and awful. It's so traumatizing to yourself, right? And you remember the bad memory and you're painting it black, and the good memory and you're painting it black. And then when you're really struggling to paint that bad memory black, what do? You go on to Reddit, on the BPD loved ones, and you say, hey, everybody, I'm going to get back together with my ex. I really missed them. Should I check out their social media page? I was thinking about sending this message. Or you go on because you did those things and you're like, hey, everyone, I kind of fucked up. What should I do? Because you resist it, because you know on some deeper unconscious level that it's a lie to turn the whole thing black. You know on some deep level that that's bullshit. It's not all black. There's black, there's white, there's gray, there's colors, it's a fucking relationship, even though it's abusive. There's different levels to it, there's different layers to it. And when we're saying I'm the innocent victim and I didn't do anything wrong and I just walked into this, we're reframing everything in that way. So every time that a memory comes up, we have to make it into something awful. And what we think is, if I make all the memories awful about that person, I'll forget about them or whatever. But there's a dishonesty there. And because there's a dishonesty there, we have a natural resistance to it, that maybe they really did love me, or maybe that is love. Or, you know, how can I get that back? So there's still a craving, right? There's still a craving, a desire there. The flip side of it is fear. So when I'm framing everything like that, and everything was bullshit and, you know, this and that, then you're trying to remember, well, like in this time, I really felt they were sincere. Like this other time, that definitely seemed like a manipulation, but this other time, this felt really sincere. How can I tell the difference between sincerity and non-sincerity? And how will I know? And because I need it for the future. What if I run into somebody who's, a carbon copy or a similar copy to that person? Like, how am I going to know that shit? So then you live in this state of perpetual fear where actually I have to kind of still obsess over their actions and red flag checklists and shit like that because I need to avoid this happening in the future. So to me, you never break that trauma bond because you're always re-engaging with it. Anytime a good memory is coming up or a bad memory is coming up, you're trying to reinforce how terrible it was. And then we have this fear of the future. To me, this doesn't solve the problem. When you kind of remove yourself from the equation, like as if you have this like as if all the things that happen in the relationship are like independent of you, and in some ways they are. Like someone who's abusive is going to abuse everyone very similarly. That particular person, their particular style of abuse is going to be pretty similar with in their track record of how they work and stuff like that. And it's also individualized for you, but it's also dynamic, right? Like you're also there. I show that to you, and eventually you're going to go, I was totally dishonest. It is so nice. Look, part of the thing that's keeping you attached to them is that you're still projecting onto them that they could change or that things were really amazing or whatever it is. And we're scared to go over and see where we're projecting because we feel like we're going to feel all of this self-pity then. And we're going to go, it was all fake. The whole relationship was bullshit. Oh my God. And now I'm going to feel really sad. Well, you can feel sad, but we're not going to get into self-pity about it. We're not going to turn that into another obsessive thought. As soon as that obsessive thought comes up, then instead of looking at a resentment, I'm going to look at a self-pity. And I'm going to see, why is the self-pity dishonest in this case? So if I'm coming back to the self-pity around the relationship, I say, look, this is dishonest because at the time I wasn't ready to see the truth of this relationship. So I'm being dishonest about my own self-pity, right? It's dishonest to do that. So we can look at this in all kinds of different ways. But to come back to the resentment. So first I'm seeing I'm dishonest in this way. Perfect, beautiful, wonderful. Over time, it chips away this projection. So now when I look back on the relationship, I still think about it sometimes. There's things I can still miss about her, but the missing is a nostalgia that is almost like right before you had a loss of innocence. It's like, oh yeah, I remember those times. Wasn't that really nice when we were still healthily, if you want to say it that way, probably it's not healthy, but we were still projecting on each other, and before it was starting to become toxic. Boy, wasn't it nice to be in that ignorant spot. I can still think of a nice conversation we had, a nice time we have, and it can be a nice time in that time. But I don't have to be attached to it in one of two ways. I don't have to be attached to it like, oh, what if it was always like that? Wouldn't that have been nice? I can think that, but I'm not going to attach to it in the same way because I'm going, well, that's dishonest. Like, no, it couldn't have been that way. It was impossible. And I can just let it go. But I can still look back on it and say, like, yeah, this legitimately was a really nice picnic we had. This legitimately was like such a fun night or a really fun weekend, or these still exist. There's nothing wrong with that. You would have this in a non-toxic relationship as well. We're still going to look back in some nostalgia, but it just changes. When we remove our projection from it, it's just less, there's less power to that. And it's just so damn liberating. It's terrifying to think of. But as long as we don't turn that then into a self-pity where you're starting to resent yourself, as long as we then get out of that, it's actually really, really helpful. Secondly, I now have to look at this action and see, how was I selfish or self-serving in this? This part for me was harder. So what I have to do is like, okay, this person just did this terrible thing. I didn't do anything wrong. I was just standing around doing nothing, whatever it was. And I have to sit there and go like, okay, wait, there's a way that I was selfish here. How can I find it? How can I find this peace? Now, there might be some exceptions to this, right? There might be some exceptions to this where maybe you just don't find it and all you find is the dishonesty. It's okay. There might be some really egregious things that happen where you can't find that selfishness, but generally you can find it somewhere. My selfishness typically was around wanting them to be what they're not. This is selfish, right? I want her to be healthy, but she's not. But I want her to be healthy, but she's not. I don't want to be humiliated because I want to control her so I can look good in front of other people, but I can't control her, right? And so we start to see all these places where we were being selfish. I mean, especially in the case of someone who we imagine might be suffering from a personality disorder, aspects of a personality disorder, or someone who's treating badly. I mean, once you're doing a program like this, the labels don't really matter at all because your focus is again and again in the correct places. So it doesn't matter. I don't have to call it a toxic relationship. I don't have to call her toxic. Like, man, I'm toxic too, and I'm contributing to this as well, right? This is a dance, right? And if I'm in this dance, I'm being just as damn toxic, but it just looks different from the outside, right? It's easier for me to look like a victim from the outside, but it's toxic. So where I'm being selfish, oh, I know what I would say, especially in the case of these kind of relationships, is like, okay, so here's somebody who has a really, really hard time keeping promises, who will lie, who forgets things, who, when they're angry, treats me terribly, when they're not angry, treats me amazingly. struggles in their own life all the time just to keep their stuff together, is continually having problems, has all these issues, these real serious mental health issues. And out of all the people in the world that I could potentially date, I'm choosing this person. And I'm getting angry at them for being themselves. I have chosen to control. We don't feel like it's control. Because codependents, we're always like pretzeling ourselves in these weird shapes in order to accommodate other people. So we feel like they're all controlling us. But actually, the selfishness for us, when we think of controlling people, we think of just as selfishness and we think, okay, well, I'm trying to get this person to act in a way that benefits me. And so this is control. So we just label it as control. But I'm looking to take somebody who has a severe mental illness that takes years to heal, who's always in pain and running away from their own pain like crazy. I am too, in a different way. And I want that person to completely change who they are, to like overnight wake up without doing any therapy and be great and love me exactly how I want to be loved. Or I want them to go to therapy and love me how I want to be loved. Like, am I God? Am I the greatest human being that's ever like who the hell am I? Why should someone change everything about themselves? Their entire personality for me, like even that's crazy. Even this is like, why would I even want that? I mean, I thought I was this nice person, accepting of people. Well, I'm not really being accepting in this case. So this is what's really, really messed up in us that we hate to look at. But the really important part about seeing where I was selfish is actually, it is empowering. At the end of this relationship, I have PTSD, I'm totally messed up, I'm totally crazy, I'm totally obsessed. I don't remember, I can't feel connected to anything that I like in life. Everything's awful, I was so depressed. And I felt so powerless. I felt like, man, if she knocks on the door tomorrow, I'll say yes to anything. It was so hard. It was so difficult. And I felt like I had no power. And like, if this person even just shows up, my power is gone and I'm just gonna give in. But actually seeing where I was selfish gave me power. It gave me a lot of my power back. Because I went, okay, yeah, I see. I see. I was being dishonest and I stayed in it because I wanted the social status of her friends to like me. And so I forgave her for this thing. And I didn't say anything in front of other people because I wanted to still look good. Whatever the hell it was, it doesn't matter. So we do this and then we refocus our thinking to some kind of service. So every time the negative thought comes up, I summarize it in a sentence. I look at where I can take responsibility. So I'm looking at my projections and I'm looking at, so my projection of dishonesty, and I'm looking at my selfishness and empowerment in it. And I'm taking more space with this because in my codependency, this first thing, an action she did, it's a novel every time, isn't it? How many 20-page letters have you drafted? That's all this part, right? No. One sentence, easy. Then a couple sentences about me. Then I go into service, whatever that is. And so it's when the thought comes up, I'm summarizing it so I'm not getting obsessed with it. I'm figuring out how to remove a projection and how to get power, and then I'm doing a service. So now I'm shifting my whole mental state to somewhere that's way healthier. I'm doing it again and again and again. And if I have to do it 30 times a day, I do it 30 times a day. Some days are great. I don't have to do it any times or once or twice. And that's it. And over time, you're training your brain to rethink this. So for me, it was like within a couple of weeks, I'm okay with the obsessive thoughts. Within a month, I didn't want to go back to the relationship, which was so surprising. And then beyond a month, it's like, I'm just focusing on my own life now. Like I'm living a better version of my own life. And I don't need, I've seen videos of like, how to get revenge, live your best life. No, not even this matters. My life could be totally messed up tomorrow. I could lose all my money. I could be homeless. I could be whatever. It doesn't change any of the dynamic or any of the way I feel about my ex. I don't have to beat them or be better than them. This is crazy. I have to live my better life just to show them, yeah, see, now you regret. No, it's not this at all. I can look back. I see how I was 50% dancing in this. I see how I was projecting and being dishonest. And I can see the true person that they are without having a horse in the race, without having to make this person better, worse, right, wrong, good, evil. It doesn't matter. This is her stuff. If you're doing these steps properly, the emotional like amazingness, it's just like nothing else you could imagine. It is really, it's just so liberating. And for those of you who are on month 5 of watching videos, do yourself a favor and join a group like this, because the knowledge is just not enough. It's a practice. It's a mental practice, right? It's the mindfulness. It's, as you said, like, also find a meditation practice. These things ground you and center you, but it takes practice again and again and again. You have good days, you have bad days. I have days that are much tougher for me, but most of the time it's okay. And I now have these tools that when this obsessive thinking comes up, I process it. I throw it out. So it lasts a couple minutes and then it's gone. And then I'm back to my life and I'm back to focusing on that. And this has been like, wow, just amazing. So many aspects of my life have improved in just a couple of months.